But Taavet, so we first met a few years ago in Singapore, and you were giving a keynote session about the industry, right? So tell us, what is Transferwise, and how are you breaking the banks?
Transferwise is an online money transfer service. We help people and businesses make international payments. So it's something which people used to do in a bank, but banks are known for providing a really horrible service and charging way too much for it. So we're doing it in a very easy to use way. We're doing it for very low cost. Typically we're up to 10 times cheaper than a bank. And we're doing it in a very transparent and easy to use way.
So when you say that, can you back that up? When you say you can cut costs cheaper than the banks, what exactly do you mean? Can you give me an exact example? And how are you doing it?
Yeah, I mean, a very simple example is, really Transferwise was built to solve a personal problem. So I was an expat. I moved from Estonia to London. I was part of the teams that built Skype in Estonia, and then I moved during my Skype journey to London. And every month I still had to go to the bank in Estonia and transfer my salary to London. So what I realized is that when I go to the bank tells me, yes, Mr. Taavet, we're happy to make the transfer. We're going to charge you 25 euros for the transfer. What the bank didn't tell me is that the exchange rate they use was 5% different to the mid-market exchange rate you can see on Google. So kind of the end result was that every time I received 50 euros less than I was expecting, and that was 5% out of 1,000 euros. So pretty significant difference, and if you kind of add it up by making a transfer every month, that adds up to a lot of money. And so why are the banks doing it? Very simple, just because they can.
Because why? Consumers are not wary of that?
Banks have done a lot to make sure people don't understand how much they're paying for various banking services. So what happens in foreign exchange is that a lot of the fees are hidden in the exchange rate. Many banks actually go as far as saying, hey, money transfer is free. And then they have an exchange rate which is 5 or 10% off compared to the mid-market exchange rate. And the same thing happens in other areas. Try to figure out how much you're paying for a mortgage for your bank. So kind of all verticals of banking are full of various hidden fees.
So tell us, how big is your reach right now?
Sorry, how
big is your reach right now?
So the company has been around for about 5 years. We're transferring $750 million of customers' money every month. And we, in UK, have 5% market share. So we announced last October that we have 5% market share. I don't know if there's another fintech company which has 5% market share in any market. But really what we're focused on now is continuing to build our global reach. So I think when I was here last 2 years ago, we've probably grown 10x since that time. But now for us the goal is, let's see how we can keep on growing UK. I think we can triple our business in UK, and then looking at the next 15 markets and how do we get them to 5%. So for this year, we're going to be launching in Japan. We'll launch in Singapore later this year. Last year, we launched Australia, and we launched the United States.
Okay, let's take a step back first. I want to go a little bit into your Asia plans in a bit, right? But how do you scale so fast? What's needed for you to scale the company? Because it's not that simple, right? You are trying to disrupt the banking industry, the finance industry. So how are you doing it?
So in fintech, scaling is quite a bit harder than in a couple other industries. So what it means for us is that every new country we go to, we have to figure out the regulatory regime. So we are licensed in Europe. We're going through licensing in US, which is state by state. We will be licensed in Singapore. We're licensed already in Japan, Australia. So first of all is regulation. Good thing is that regulators are starting to embrace fintech. Regulators are getting around to the idea that fintech brings more transparency, brings better choice to consumers. And so really starting to embrace it. UK regulators are fantastic. Singapore regulators are also very, very forward-thinking. So next up to regulation is banking. We need to find a local banking partner that enables us to plug into the local payment system in every country. And then we have to make sure that we do any needed integration and cultural localization. But it's a decent amount of work. Whereas for many other online services, it might be much easier.
Yeah, so you definitely still need to work with the banks. But you're trying to disrupt them. How afraid are they of you?
That's a good question. We should ask that from our friendly banks.
Do you have your banking partners here?
So the reality is that it's not only us, but if you look at banks and kind of every vertical of banking is being attacked by a tech player. And when I say attacked, that really means that in every vertical there is a tech company which is doing what a bank should be doing, but doing it in a much better way. We can see it in lending, we can see it in money transfer, we can see it in asset management, in savings, etc. And everywhere, what the consumers are getting as a result of this is a faster, cheaper, easier to use service than what the banks are used to offering. Like the only thing which banks are good for is keeping your money.
So why aren't they doing all these improvements? If let's say you're saying that every single part of a banking system now is already being fulfilled better by a tech player, why aren't they doing a better job? Why aren't they doing a better job?
Because I think banks are used to being in a world where consumers don't change their service provider. So they're kind of sitting in very comfy chairs, kind of like the ones we have here on stage. And I think they've just gotten a little bit greedy, they've become a little bit lazy, and they haven't been focusing on innovation and how do you make sure your customer continuously gets a better service. Meanwhile, what's happened is that consumers are used to using online services in many other parts of their life. If we want to make a phone call, we use Skype. We get an instant video
Good job plugging
call.
Skype again.
Thank you. If you want a taxi, then you order a taxi with Uber or whatever is the local alternative. You click a button on your smartphone and the car comes up. That's pretty magical first time you see it. And now consumers are thinking, hey, other parts of my life have been made so much better by tech companies, and they're going to the bank and saying, hey, why aren't you banks doing it better? But banks don't have the culture.
Are you sure that this is being thought by all sectors and demographics of consumers?
Amazingly, it is. So we did a study recently called The Future of Finance, and what amazed me when I was looking at the results that across different demographics, the attitudes were pretty similar. So of course, there's a little bias to the younger generations and millennials, but even if we go to people who are 50 and older, they're equally starting to feel it. I can see it. I can see it when I look at my parents who are 70 now. They've been using Skype for 10 years. They use online banking. So.
But Skype is different from money transfer, right? I can't see my parents using banking apps.
Why? Why not?
Why?
If they become so used in all other verticals, then at one point they'll be like, why the hell should I call an Uber to go to my bank branch when I could do that on my smartphone? So I think you're underestimating what your parents are capable of doing. I certainly did with my parents.
Okay, yours are 70. My parents are like 60 over. But so what? Can you take me back to, let's say, when you approach a new potential banking partner in a new country? How does the conversation go? I mean, do they embrace the conversation? Are they happy to talk to you? Or do you have to do a lot of market education?
So we work with more than 50 banks around the world right now, and we have not had to take a gun to any of these banks. They're all happily working with us because we're paying some fees for the services they provide us. It's a free capitalist world. I think the way smarter banks think about it is that yes, while Transferwise comes and disrupts them on the consumer side, they're better off working with us and selling us wholesale payment services, so at least they get some benefit for it. Because if it wasn't us, it's going to be someone else. So. In that sense, it's these relationships are pretty good.
So, how do you see the general finance and banking industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
So, as I was saying a moment ago, we can see that every vertical of banking is being done better now by a tech company. So the question really comes down to, if we go fast forward 10 years, are we going to be using 10 different service providers for all of our financial needs? Or will we see new fintech banks emerge? I think the answer is probably kind of in between the two. We'll see the fintech companies cooperate together. We'll see fintech companies cooperate with old banks. But I think the end result is that a significant share of banking will be done by tech companies. So if I go back to think about Skype, Skype is today a 12-year-old company, and Skype owns 40% of long-distance calling. So in a similar way, I think we'll see that some 30–40% of banking is going to be done by tech companies. And some of the current banks won't make it. Others will probably go through a very painful digital transformation process, which is going to take them a long time. They'll have to get rid of a lot of jobs. But they'll come out in the other end as a company which is equal in speed and capital efficiency to the way a tech-enabled startup is.
So there's a great question from Pinjaho here. What is stopping banks doing the same thing as you do, entering the same space as you are?
What's stopping banks is really comes down to the idea of disruption. So if a bank today is earning, let's take money transfer as an example. If a bank today is earning $840 million for money transfer, that's, by the way, a bank called HSBC. So, and they are charging, let's say, an average of 7%. So if they were to go to the Transferwise model and start charging 0.7%, that means that $840 million of revenue would shrink to $84 million of revenue. That's a very hard thing to sell to your shareholders. That's kind of, that's the main thing which is stopping them. They have to go through this in an artificially delayed manner, because otherwise their current cost structure would not survive. And even then, it's hard to sell to your shareholders that we're going to be a business which is 10 times smaller. I'm really worried how will banks do it? How will Western Union go through this transformation? We're knowingly shrinking the revenue pool in the industry by an order by 10x. That's the biggest thing getting in the way.
So we talked a little bit just now before the panel, right? Before the fireside chat, and who are your competitors? They're not just banks, right?
So we spend a lot of time with our customers, asking them, how does Transferwise work for them, what we can do better.
Okay, take a step back. Who are your customers?
Yeah. So our customers are people who have some element of international in their life. So it's people who maybe have moved to a different country and they're still getting their salary paid in a different currency. Maybe they have a student loans they're paying back for the next 20 years. Maybe they have real estate abroad. Maybe they have family abroad whom they're sending money every month. So we spend lots of time with our customers to find out how well Transferwise works for them, how can we do things better. And we also ask them who did they use previously. Majority of our customers come from banks, and then the other ones which we can see featuring are Western Union and PayPal. And all of the above. So banks are charging way too high without disclosing it. Same thing for Western Union and for PayPal. Western Union even in their last financial results said that the revenue from foreign exchange increased last year. So kind of the only thing I can guess is that they moved even more of the revenue into the hidden fees last year.
Okay, so when you say that, then are people aware? Are their customers aware? If you say they increased their hidden fees?
So when we speak with people and when we speak with consumers in the industry, consumers are generally aware that they are not getting a great service from their bank, and they're aware that what the bank tells them is not exactly what the bank is doing. But when we tell them that, based on comparison research done by an independent party, that we are 7, 8, or 9 times cheaper than their bank, then they really get surprised.
But is there a lot of inertia because it just works so well for them, and then they're just willing to pay the extra fees even though it's hidden? How do you convert someone who's been using Western Union for a really long time and really well?
We're all victims of our own habits, I'm sure I am, I know from my behavior, I'm sure you are, as much as we all think we're early adopters. So inertia is the hardest, but inertia backed by ignorance is even worse. So the first thing is enlightening them, telling them how much their bank is charging them, and kind of making it really clear that what are the other differences. So you might be paying 9 times more to your bank, but besides that, your bank transfer takes 3 or 4 days, versus with Transferwise, you can do it on your smartphone. It's going to be there in the next hour or the same day. So kind of making it very clear. And then besides this, if I look at how do we grow our business, the biggest source of new customers is existing customers for us. Providing our customers with a service which is so delightful that they tell their friends about it. That's the biggest engine of our growth.
And do you see a lot of word of mouth referral?
That's the biggest channel of new users for us.
That's the biggest? Okay. So when you do your work, your service, when you offer it across the world, how many countries again are you in?
So we're live today in 35 countries. 35
countries. And on the currency pair, it doesn't mean that you have a two-way currency transference, right?
Yeah, so when we first launched the business, we were doing it between pounds and euros. But then we started spending time with our customers and listening to what they're saying, and we pretty quickly learned that people came to us saying, hey, we know that we can send money between euros and pounds, but we want to send money to India, we want to send money to the US, we want to send money to Singapore. And then we started thinking, and we kind of realized that, yes, we do have a global mission, and we want to bring Transferwise everywhere, but that's going to take a very long time. But then as we learn more about what we're doing and how the financial world works, keep in mind that neither me or my co-founder has a background in banking. So, it was a journey of learning for us, which I think was actually the only reason we could do it, because we weren't spoiled. So as we were learning about it, we realized that even in corridors where we don't have a two-way matching system, we can still provide a service which is cheaper, which is faster, and much easier to use than the alternatives. So therefore, we haven't shied away from opening what we call one-way corridors, and we'll keep on opening one-way corridors until we cover the whole world, and then eventually we'll turn most or all of these into two-way corridors.
And you don't apply the same scalability model across, right? Across the world, because you have the P2P in most of your markets, but it doesn't work that way globally, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of the same one-way or two-way corridor thing. So two-way corridors, we use a P2P model, and one-way corridors, we work with the financial market, so we work with banks or brokers, and we use them to make the payments and to do the currency exchange.
Okay, so we're in Asia, where we have quite a few countries around the region who are recipients a lot of remittance money, essentially. How big is the remittance business in Transferwise?
It's a little bit hard to draw the difference between remittance and money transfer. But so
they're all money transfer.
The way I differentiate this is that remittance is money going from developed world to developing world. And remittance is very well researched. The World Bank says it's about $600 billion, which is sent as remittance every year. And money transfer, which is the other brother, which is developed world to developed world, we estimate that actually to be twice as big as remittance. So when remittance is 600 billion, we think money transfer is more than $1 trillion that gets sent every year. And we've had much bigger focus on sending money between developed countries.
Developed countries.
Yeah, so that's been our focus when we started. That's kind of where our own problem was. And when we think about our customers are global expats, they are well-educated professionals who are getting a relatively probably higher salary. But then, we've learned that people are coming to us wanting to send money to India, which is a classic remittance destination. So we've been adding Cs, and over time we'll be covering the whole spectrum. Okay, so
for example, a market like India, right? So one of the top questions here is that how do you deliver last mile remittances then? Because you're talking about a lot of people may not have access to the points, right? Points of access everywhere.
So we've so far only worked with banks. So we've been delivering money only to bank accounts. Kind of overall, I personally believe that all money is becoming digital around the world. It's a matter of time. So even if we look at India, there are 100 million new bank accounts being opened in India every year. So yeah, it might take us 5 more years for most people in India to have a bank account, but already now there are enough people who have bank accounts. But what comes after bank accounts is all digital wallets, M-Pesa, and these things. There's not a lot of difference for us when it comes to whether we integrate a bank or we would integrate an online wallet. So far, when we prioritize things, it's always been the bank accounts which come up higher on the list, but very soon we'll start seeing that, instead of adding a bank account in, let's say Myanmar, just as an example, it might make more sense for us to add support for M-Pesa in Kenya instead. So we'll get to covering that. But I think cash delivery is something which I would guess over time becomes less important.
Less important? But you're doing none of that right now, right? Which means someone, in some remote village who doesn't have a bank account, you can't reach them at the moment.
That is very true.
Okay.
It's sad, but true.
So what's your Asia footprint and how are you intending to grow in Asia? Just now you mentioned that you're opening, offices in here, Singapore, Japan?
So, Australia, I guess, is not Asia. Need to be very
APAC, Asia Pacific.
correct about that. But that was the first country we launched in this region. So we launched Australia end of last year, and we've had great success in Australia so far. But we don't even have a team on the ground in Australia yet. So we'll have some people who will be moving to Australia, so we'll be setting up a team.
So how do you decide which country to open up next? Is it based on volume of money transfers in general? How much of a variable is, the regulations and the banking systems? How much does it play into your growth strategy?
So we look at two things at first. One of them is how many people are coming to Transferwise saying we want to send money to Australia. So people can sign up if we don't support the currency yet, then people can sign up on our site, and we use that as a very strong signal. So we look at that, and we also look at information about money flows, looking at kind of which corridors are bigger in the world. So of course we'll prioritize the bigger ones first, and then we'll cross-check that with regulation and what we know about the local market. But the reality is that we've been working on Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia for quite a while. Australia was the first one to be ready. Next up, we'll be launching Japan, we'll launch Singapore. So all of these have been a work in progress for some time.
Are you doing anything in China?
We send money to China right now. We don't send money from China. Eventually, we'd like to get to China, but it's...
you have competition there, yeah, with other Alipays and the WeChats and stuff like
China is, let's say, it's a more complicated country.
Okay, so let's take a step back now and go back to 2013. You stopped processing payments to Bitcoin exchanges back then. Why? Why do you first launch that, include that, and then take them out?
We never did anything special for Bitcoin. People just use Transferwise to send money to a Bitcoin exchange's bank account. Given that, in 2013, Bitcoin was, people didn't quite know what Bitcoin is, so we were a little bit scared about it. We started thinking about all the regulatory aspects, and we decided that it makes sense for us to stop doing that. So reality is nothing's changed. Today we don't see consumer demand for Bitcoin. I'm tempted to say that Bitcoin is dead. We've seen lots of hype around it, but really, most of what's been driving Bitcoin is people buying Bitcoin, believing that other people will buy Bitcoin and the price will go up. But if we're looking at kind of real-world applications, are we seeing millions of people using Bitcoin every day to buy things? No, we're not seeing that. So I think, Bitcoin in that sense has failed to deliver anything which makes consumers' lives better.
Really? Well, that's a very large claim. Because there's a lot of companies, going to Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general. You don't think that this is something that will take over the world?
I don't think there is anything that supports that today.
Do you think that there'll be a time in the world where money can flow completely freely?
I definitely dream of that.
You dream of that. So you're getting Transferwise to work on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a way, I could say that the Transferwise and Skype missions are pretty well connected. In Skype, we made it possible to communicate around the world, and thus we made the world smaller. And yet where we are today, it's 12 years after Skype, and still moving money around the world isn't as easy as making a call. So I'd like to make that happen. And we're busy at work doing that, making the world smaller and making country borders slightly less relevant.
So, okay, if let's say we really want that ideal world where money can flow freely, what is needed for that to happen?
We need to see more adoption of technology. I think we need to see maybe regulation, thinking about it a bit more. Globally, maybe slightly more unified, simplified regulation. And we need to see companies like Transferwise keep on growing. We'll make it happen. I think the good thing about money is it is such a big problem that there is always going to be room for multiple companies. It's not going to be a one winner takes it all market. I believe that Transferwise will be one of the winners, and I'm sure there will be other people who will be successful as well. And I think that together will deliver this world where money can flow freely. Okay,
I'm going to badger you again with the blockchain component. So we have one of the questions here, right? How will blockchain technology impact your business operating model? Because linking that to the point about an ideal world where money can flow freely, do you think that will be part of the equation?
So when I look at blockchain today, I think where I hope we'll see the first traction is using that on the institutional side between bigger financial institutions for clearing and settlement. So there are a couple of companies who are working on that today, and hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months we'll start seeing some real-world use cases. Where will blockchain be used in 10 years' time? I'll tell you honestly, I don't know. But if in any way that helps money move freely, then I'm sure we will adopt it. Just today with Bitcoin, we haven't seen that. If blockchain helps us do it, we'd love to use it.
So you're the first employee at Skype, right? So when I think about you growing Skype and now you growing TransferWise, my question to you is that, okay, you said this once in an article somewhere lying on the internet, which is that TransferWise is a Skype of payments. Comments on that?
I think it kind of goes back to the same thing of making the world smaller and doing kind of bringing the 10x solution to consumers. So if we go back to the world before Skype, and if you had to make a long distance calls, and not long before that, you had to call the operator, you had to ask the operator to connect your call, and it was a very expensive, very slow process. And in Skype, we made it possible for people to click this green button, and you can communicate with anyone around the world. And to be honest, Skype hasn't been the only one succeeding in that, and we can maybe even say that maybe Skype isn't the one succeeding anymore today. We have WhatsApp and so on and so on. But kind of Skype started all of that journey, and the idea is that to have a voice or video call around the world, it doesn't have to cost you anything, was kind of made possible by Skype. I think in a similar way, the idea is that you can move money for no cost, or for very low cost, or maybe for no cost in the future. I like to think that that's what Transferwise is doing, and we're getting that in motion. We're doing a lot of that ourselves, but I'm sure there will be other people who will be part of the journey down the road.
Okay, so about building company again. So when you go into a new market, how long does it typically take for you to enter a new market? When you decide that you want to enter Singapore, from that decision-making point all the way to actually launching that and having that currency being part of your equation, how long does it take?
On average, between 12 and 24 months.
Okay. So now going back then, we only have about 5 minutes left. Going back to the kind of the building the company journey, how similar was it between building Skype and TransferWise? Have you learned from the process and have a playbook right now when you enter new markets and when you grow companies?
So we're starting to get to a point where we have more of a repeatable model when going to new markets. But for us, going to new markets doesn't necessarily mean that we're building a team in that market right away. So today we have a team in US, we have teams in Tallinn and London, and then a few tiny ones in other places. Surely over time we'll be building out more local teams as well. So, but it's really kind of the first part of regulation, establishing local entities, speaking with regulators, talking with banks is something which we have very well developed teams doing that in London. But kind of overall, the journey of building a company, I think every high growth company goes through the same painful, slightly chaotic growth story. So last year, we grew the team from 200 to 500 people, roughly. So that's, anyone who's gone through that can tell you that it's a painful.
And I think when I first met you, like in 2014, you were only 50 people, maybe?
Probably.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of by definition, that is a very painful and chaotic journey. And, you really need to spend lots of time working with your people, thinking about the culture of the company, figuring out how do you hire people which fit with the culture that you're trying to build. So I think, a lot of that we went through there are similar experiences that I felt in Skype where we had a similar hypergrowth.
Okay, so going back to the topic, right? Disrupting the banks. If you had to give one advice to banks, what would it be?
Listen to your customers.
Okay, all right. We're the end of there. Thank you so much, Taavet. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Taavet. Thank you very much, Gwen, for a fantastic session.